Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse swung past Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3's $48 million opening day with an impressive $51 million. To compare, the original 2018 Into the Spider-Verse movie performed closer to a traditional animated release, opening to $35 million in its opening day. Due to massive hype and reviews, the animated film outpaced its $80 million projection heading into the weekend, with the film nabbing an impressive $120 million in its opening weekend, landing it the second biggest opening weekend of the year behind the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Essentially meaning that Sony has once again out-Marveled Disney Marvel by making a movie with a character they sorely need. The one thing that could actually save them from the rut they put themselves in. To make it worse, James Gunn f***ed off the DC, leaving Marvel to its fate, and despite Guardians' heroic run in the box office, they might still need a W. To add insult to injury, Sony's been playing hardball on the next set of movies with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Some early talks might have happened, but still no concrete announcements have been made, which is super weird given that No Way Home was a massive financial success. If they're smart, and I think they probably are, they could just take the Tom Holland Peter Parker and do their own trilogy, completely undercutting one of Marvel's few remaining proper heroes. To top it off, they're even showing Disney Marvel how to do an epic multiverse saga.
And saving every world.
I can do both!
All stations, stop Spider-Man! You? Me?
Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse, the sequel to the critically acclaimed Into the Spider-Verse, a film that I really like and definitely on top of my favorite animated films of all time. The events of Across picks up a year after the last movie. Enough time passed for Miles Morales to have grown. He's taller now and looks older. His superhero career is in full swing, no pun intended, and we follow him as he tries to balance that responsibility with his personal life. And in the middle of all this struggle, Gwen Stacy comes in and takes over his movie so they can stop the entire multiverse from imploding. But I guess it's about time for the review here. But first, thank you so much for stopping by. Welcome to Farside Media. Join me as we talk about a teenage superhero trying to find his place in the universe, or Spider-Verse. And again, I really like this movie, but there are some problems here. Easy, fixable problems that would have made this good movie into a really great one. As it stands, this movie lies in the shadow of its predecessor and tries to make up for it with a more stylized comic book animation that really tries hard to kick your eyeballs into submission. Of course, there's more teenage angst, more talking, and more multiverse shenanigans, and lots more spider individuals. You know, it's really difficult to follow up on the original, especially a very good one. Into the Spider-Verse was a very good film, which is still my favorite out of the two. Not only did it completely subvert expectations, but the story behind its creation was equally impressive. In my humble opinion, it's one of the best animated features ever made. The story was good. It did Miles Morales a solid by introducing him into the mainstream, who had his first appearance in Ultimate Fallout number 4, to his first solo outing as the new web-swinging hero in 2011's Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. The film showed how multiverse stories should be handled by adding a slew of other spider people to newer audiences, but undoubtedly it had an immense impact on animation as well. They basically invented a new art form here. You can see their distinct style influencing other movies, and that's a really good thing. It inspires competition and would lead to innovation. And it doesn't hurt when your movie made a ton of money. So it's a no-brainer they'd actually make more movies. We have 2 movies, in fact. This is part 1 of 2. The third movie, Beyond the Spider-Verse, will be released next year in 2024, standing in the shadow of the success of its predecessor, but there's no question they've nailed it with the look of the film. The art style was as gorgeous as ever, having different styles for every alternate timeline. Whenever Miles travels to all these different universes, meeting spider people, the style changes to fit that spider person, and man, do they do some creative things. Like Spider-Gwen's world, for example, changes from scene to scene and everything's saturated with these pastel colors. There's Indian Spider-Man's world reimagined as one giant metropolis, which is really cool, along with some of the other surprise universes you might not be expecting to see here as well. They really pushed the boundaries on what they could do with the animation here. Top-notch character work as well, especially with the villain Spot and how they showcase his powers was really interesting. Also, music was a really big part of the first movie, and I'm glad it is here as well. They kind of matched that with the visuals and animation to make it pop, elevating the action scenes even more, being as high as it needs to be. Then it turns around to match those quieter, intimate moments between the characters. And they do ramp up the emotion in here as well. There's a lot of dialogue, and the character development is really heavy, along with family dynamics, which, to be honest, I wasn't really expecting all that much from this film. The movie does a good job capturing that teenage angst and dealing with a lot of these emotions, and the film leans heavily on those moments. At times, times it probably lingers too much. This is about the time where you feel that massive runtime. It's 2 hours and 21 minutes, and unless you're a massive Miles Morales fan, that runtime will hit you like a brick. There's a ton of downtime here, there's a lot of feelings to unpack and to process, the dialogue drags on. Literally, we see characters take up precious real estate with talking with a counselor, talking with dads, talking with mom, talking with random strangers, and talking to each other. Which isn't exactly a negative, I just wish it could have been more efficient. Isolating those moments to about 2 or 3 would have been the sweet spot, but instead we get like 10 of those moments. I'm not even kidding. For sure, it could have used a trim, cut the fat along the edges, and this could have been a much better movie. What I liked about the first one was it was very focused and it really wanted to get the story going. But I guess being the second movie, this has the benefit of doing the heavy lifting. It sets up a lot of things and that tends to weigh down on the pacing, but at the end of the day, you have to have some concessions. Also, a lot of those added runtime has got to do with Gwen Stacy, aka Spider-Gwen, fleshing her out, and I gotta say that entire thing could have been its own movie with the time they gave it. You could probably say it's a mini movie. It would have been interesting to see it as a sort of a prequel to Across the Spiderverse. Gwen does get a lot of the spotlight here and it takes a little bit more from Miles' story, but I guess it's no longer just about him anymore. And as far as the film recapping the entire first movie, I'd say doing it twice is just a bit too much. Like the first part of this movie was a creative way of going over what happened in the first one from Gwen's perspective. You get through that opening, you're like a few minutes into the movie, and then you get hit with another recap. It's like, didn't we just do this? Why are we spending time recapping all over again? And it's not like it functions like the first movie recaps, so I'm not sure why they have to do that. But moving on to the characters now, I found the villain, the actual villain in the movie, Spot, who I appreciated, started off as a kind of comic relief character, and at first you wouldn't think too much of him because he does really dumb things. Voiced by Jason Schwartzman, starts off as a minor crook with a connection to Miles' past, then he turns out to have the power to bring any member berry in every single Spider-Man ever. But seriously, you see his journey from basically a nobody to becoming the biggest threat in the movie, going on to the main character now.
My name is Miles Morales.
Who actually takes a step back from his spotlight. I mean, we don't actually get to see him until 25 minutes in, and they actually make it a point to tell you that early on with the Gwen introduction. But there's still enough here to flesh out where he is in his life and his struggle, so pretty good. On the other hand, Spider-Punk Howard Brown, voiced by Daniel Kaluuya, was a standout and could easily be a fan favorite. Spider-Man 2099, aka Miguel O'Hara, is voiced by Oscar Isaac. The villain, or so we thought, is actually not that bad. He's the head of Spider City, he's a leader, he's menacing, and he goes head to head with Miles at one point. The half Mexican, half Irish superhero made his debut in Spider-Man 2099 #1 in 1992. That's right, he actually beat Miles Morales as the first Hispanic Spider-Man. We also get a bit of his backstory here, and for the most part, he's a fine villain, focused and determined, which is more than I can say for the other characters in the movie. First of all, we have to talk about Peter Parker. I really hate this character for some reason. I know he has a minor role in the movie, but boy, do they take him down a notch. He wasn't that great to begin with, but making him a nanny is really low. Plus, what is it with this movie and irresponsible parents? Ben Reilly, aka Scarlet Spider, and if you're a Spidey 90s fan, you'd recognize him, and they actually made him into a fucking joke. I get what they're doing, the stereotype, it's the 90s, but still, I did not like what they did here. Unlike his portrayal, the character has a lot of nuance. He's Peter Parker's clone and central to the clone saga from the comics. He named himself after Uncle Ben and Aunt May's middle name. They could have made a whole set of movies with a character like that. Probably the most atrocious of them all is Jessica Drew, aka the original Spider-Woman. Clearly, they tried to get versions of Spidey people that can double as antagonists. The character was introduced as a villain in Marvel Spotlight 1977. She was trained by Hydra, so she really fits the category. But she does become Gwen's mentor and apparently way better than Spider-Man 2099. But still, she didn't have to be pregnant. Maybe they don't want to take away from Spider-Gwen because she's calling herself Spider-Woman now, and that might lead to a spin-off project soon, so that's that. And I also want to talk about something weird I noticed. This is a minor gripe for me, but every time we get an action sequence, it's played for comedy. Don't get me wrong, it actually works on some of the scenes, but it's just weird that it happens on each and every one of them. We never get a chance to focus on the threat, and it does take away any sense of danger from the the fights that we're getting. Spider-Man's quip is part of his signature, I get that, but since every one of them is a version of Spider-Man, well, you know, it does make sense if they do the opposite, a villain that's really serious, but even spots like that, so it's constant overpowering dialogue all the time. There's one scene of them trying to get Spot and they're so busy talking to each other during the chase they didn't realize what the villain was actually doing until it's too late. And towards the end of our review here, is it fan servicey? Definitely. At times it's constantly trying to throw stuff at you, but that's kind of what the movie is. Plus it plays into Miles' story, so it kind of works. A big strength of the movie is that it's very unconventional. There's a lot of other Spider-Man movies out there and it almost feels like a deconstruction of those tropes that we usually associate with a Spider-Man flick. It very much feels like it's trying to break the mold and be more than your typical superhero, and I respect that. So nitpicks aside, I do like this movie and recommend you guys seeing it and making it more of a success in the box office. Definitely looking for the next one as well. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Appreciate any support for the channel. See you on the next one.
Look, I never knew they had a Spider-Woman statue in the Smithsonian.
They don't.
I knew